You ever had your entire life humiliated in front of the people who are supposed to love you most, disguised as a celebration cake? Well, mine did. The cake literally read "Congratulations, loser." And that was just the beginning. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I walked into my parents' living room expecting a small celebration for my promotion. Balloons floated from the ceiling, and the smell of chocolate cake filled the air. Everyone was smiling, or so it seemed. I didn't notice the way my brother Liam was smirking, or how my parents, Margaret and Tom, exchanged quick, almost guilty glances. And there, in the center of the table, was the cake. I froze. Big, mocking letters stared back at me. "Congratulations, loser." I blinked, hoping it was some kind of joke, but the laughter around me told me it wasn't. My parents chuckled quietly. Liam snickered. My fiancé, Ethan, and my so-called best friend, Nicole, were barely hiding their grins. The people I had trusted most, the ones who were supposed to care, were all in on it. My chest tightened, and my hands shook, but I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I picked up my purse and coat, my fingers brushing against the note I had slipped into the cake earlier. Something small, almost meaningless to anyone else, but a mark of my defiance. It was a private reminder that I wouldn't be broken so easily, that this humiliation wouldn't define me. I could feel all eyes on me as I moved toward the door. The laughter seemed louder now, echoing in the room like a cruel soundtrack to my life. I took a deep breath and didn't look back. Every step I took away from that house was heavy, but with each one, my mind sharpened. I wasn't just leaving the room, I was beginning to plan. The cool evening air hit my face as I stepped outside, and I let it wash over me. The cake, the laughter, the betrayal, they wouldn't stay in control. I tightened my grip on my purse, thinking about how easily they had all underestimated. They thought this little stunt would hurt me forever. They thought I would crumble under the weight of their mockery. But I wouldn't. Not then. Not ever. The note I had left in the cake, something so small it went unnoticed, felt like the first tiny victory, a spark of the fire I was starting to build inside me. One day they would see what it meant to cross me. For now, I walked away quietly, letting the laughter fade behind me. The night sky stretched above, dark and endless, and for the first time since I entered that room, I felt a strange clarity. This was just the beginning, and I was ready. The people who called me a loser would soon learn that losing me was their biggest mistake. I slipped into the quiet streets, the heels of my shoes clicking against the pavement, each step echoing like a promise to myself. Humiliation had knocked at my door, but I didn't answer. I would rise carefully, silently, and make sure everyone involved remembered that a true victory isn't in the laughter of the moment. It's in the quiet, unstoppable power that comes after. I had always been the responsible one, the one who worked hard and tried to keep the family together. I paid bills that weren't mine, helped Liam with school projects, listened to my parents' endless complaints without ever complaining back. I thought that being kind and dependable would earn their respect, or at least their love. But looking back, I realize it never did. They didn't just ignore my efforts. They used them to make me look small, like I was never good enough no matter what I did. Seeing the cake and the laughter made me understand something I hadn't fully faced before. Ethan and Nicole weren't just cruel, they were clever. They had slowly turned everyone against me, feeding little lies and half-truths until my own family saw me as the joke they wanted me to be. My parents didn't question it, and Liam laughed along without hesitation. The people I trusted most weren't just silent, they were active participants in my humiliation. The betrayal cut deeper than any insult or joke could. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of hurt and disbelief. How could people who were supposed to care about me enjoy watching me shrink in that moment? It wasn't just about the cake. It was every unkind word they'd ever said, every time they dismissed my feelings, every time they made me feel like I was the problem. That one moment brought it all crashing down in front of everyone, and I could see clearly for the first time just how carefully they had built this against me. I left quietly, my hands trembling but my mind sharp. I didn't scream, and I didn't cry in front of them. I didn't need to give them the satisfaction of watching me break. Every step away from that house was heavy with the weight of betrayal, but it also carried something else, a growing fire inside me. I would not let this define me. I would not let their laughter and manipulation take my life from me. Walking through the empty streets, the cool air against my face did little to calm the storm inside me. Every memory of their small cruelties and secret manipulations circled in my mind. I remembered every time Ethan whispered lies to my parents, every joke Nicole had made at my expense, every look that told me I wasn't enough. They thought they could crush me with their clever little plans, but I realized then that they had underestimated me completely. I carried my hurt quietly, letting it settle into determination. I didn't need to confront them yet. This wasn't a moment for anger, it was a moment for focus. I would take everything they had ever belittled me for and turn it into strength. Every step I took that night was a promise to myself. I would reclaim my life carefully, without letting them see the fire I was starting to build. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt a strange clarity. The betrayal of my family, the manipulation of Ethan and Nicole, the laughter that had haunted me, it was all fuel now. I would use it. They had shown me exactly who they were, and that gave me the advantage. The pain was sharp, but it was not defeat. It was a beginning, and I was ready to start. I closed the door of my apartment behind me and sank onto the couch, feeling the weight of everything crash down at once. The room was quiet, but my mind was loud, replaying every moment from that night. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for my family, for Ethan, for everyone I trusted. I had covered debts I didn't have to, stayed up late helping Liam with homework he barely appreciated, offered advice and guidance to my parents even when they refused to listen. I had given so much, and it all seemed to mean nothing. The betrayal from my family cut the deepest. My parents, the people who were supposed to love me no matter what, had laughed at me. Liam had joined in. They had all let Ethan and Nicole manipulate them, and they hadn't even tried to defend me. The thought made my chest tighten with anger, a bitter heat that spread through me and refused to go away. How could people who were supposed to care be so cruel? Then came the discovery that made my blood boil. While sorting through some work files I had left at Ethan's apartment, I realized he had been taking credit for my ideas at my job. The strategies, the plans I had spent months developing, were being used by him as if they were his own. Nicole had been in on it, of course, helping him cover his tracks and making sure no one suspected me. My anger turned sharper, harder. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, manipulation, and deliberate cruelty. I sat there in the dim light, my fingers gripping the edge of the couch as the anger inside me began to focus. I could feel the pieces of my life scattered, but for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt something else, determination. I would not let this end with me as the victim. I would plan, I would act, and I would take control of the situation. It wasn't just Ethan and Nicole who needed to face consequences. My family, the ones who had always belittled me, who had made me feel small and insignificant, had to understand what they had done. I wouldn't destroy them in anger, but I would make sure they felt the weight of their cruelty, the same way I had felt it. Every insult, every sneer, every cruel laugh had a price, and I was prepared to collect it. I started thinking through my plan, small steps at first, careful and precise. I would rebuild what they had tried to tear down. I would reclaim my work, my dignity, my sense of power. I would make them see me not as a loser, but as someone they had underestimated at their own peril. For hours, I let the ideas swirl in my mind, turning anger into strategy. Each memory of their betrayal became fuel, each stolen idea a reminder of what I was fighting for. I would be patient. I would be smart. I would rise above the humiliation and the manipulation, and I would do it in a way they could never ignore. By the time the sun began to rise, the chaos in my chest had settled into clarity. I wasn't just angry, I was focused. I had a path forward. The pieces of my life were scattered, yes, but I was picking them up, shaping them into something stronger than they could ever imagine. I spent the next few days quietly gathering everything I could find, pieces of proof that would show the truth. Emails Ethan had sent that copied my work, texts between him and Nicole that exposed their lies, financial records showing how they had taken advantage of me. Each file, each message, each record felt like a small weapon in my hands, something I could use to finally turn the tables. I moved carefully, making sure no one suspected what I was doing. As I went through everything, I began to notice something I hadn't thought about before. My family, the people who had laughed at me and called me a loser, were more dependent on me than they realized. They relied on my job connections, on the advice I gave them, on my ability to fix problems they refused to face themselves. Every favor I had ever done, every door I had opened for them, was a kind of leverage I could now use. That knowledge lit a quiet fire in me. I didn't have to act recklessly to make them feel the weight of their actions. I just had to be smart. I started to build a plan in my mind. It wasn't about lashing out in anger. It was about control. Step by step, I thought through how to expose Ethan and Nicole, how to show my family the truth about their betrayal, how to reclaim the things they had tried to take from me. I imagined the look on their faces when they realized I had been paying attention all along, quietly collecting proof while they laughed at me. I made lists, wrote down ideas, and rearranged them in order of what would have the strongest impact. Each move needed to be calculated. I couldn't leave anything to chance. They had spent years manipulating situations to their favor, and now it was my turn to think 3 steps ahead. I imagined sending the emails, revealing the documents, confronting the lies, but only at the exact right moment, when their arrogance would make them most vulnerable. At the same time, I reminded myself not to let this consume me. I kept up with my own work, kept showing up to meetings, keeping a calm, composed exterior. It was part of the plan. They had underestimated me for so long because they thought I was weak, because they thought I would never fight back. If they could see me now, they would know I had been planning this silently, perfectly, while pretending to be the same person they had always dismissed. Every night I reviewed what I had collected, making sure nothing was missing, no detail overlooked. Each proof added weight to my strategy. Each realization of their dependence made me more confident. I wasn't acting out of impulse. I was acting with purpose. Slowly, carefully, I was building a way to show everyone exactly what they had done and make sure they could not ignore it. By the end of the week, I had a folder of evidence, a clear sequence of steps, and a mind sharpened with focus. The first pieces of my plan were in place. I felt the quiet satisfaction of progress, knowing that this was the beginning of turning their games back on. For the first time since the humiliation, I could see a path forward, one that would give me back what was mine and show everyone that underestimating me had been their biggest mistake. The day I had been planning for finally came. I walked into the office early, carrying a folder with everything I had gathered. I felt a quiet thrill running under my skin. No one suspected anything. I had kept my composure, played my part, and now it was time to turn the tables. The meeting started as usual, with Ethan presenting his latest project. He spoke confidently, unaware that I had proof he had been taking credit for. I waited for the right moment, listening carefully as he explained strategies and ideas I had created. When he paused, I stepped forward and calmly asked to share some documents with the team. I opened the folder and began showing emails, drafts, and notes that clearly proved I had been the one behind every plan Ethan. I explained the timeline, the development of ideas, and the work I had done to bring them to life. The room went quiet. Colleagues who had admired Ethan looked shocked, some whispering to each other. I could see the color drain from his face, the confidence slipping away. Ethan tried to interrupt, stammering and blaming misunderstandings, but I stayed calm, letting the evidence speak for itself. My voice was steady, each word measured. The more he protested, the more obvious it became to everyone that he had been dishonest. I watched as faces that had once smiled at him now turned to look at me with respect, some even nodding in approval of how I handled everything. Nicole appeared at the edge of the room, clearly ready to jump in and defend him, but it was too late. The proof was too clear, and her protests fell flat. She faltered, trying to argue, but the documents and timelines I presented left no room for her interference. I kept my eyes on the evidence, not her, knowing that the truth carried more weight than any desperate words she could say. The moment Ethan's humiliation was complete, I felt a rush of satisfaction I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't about revenge in a mean way. It was about reclaiming control, proving that I was capable and deserving of respect. The confidence that had been shaken by betrayal now returned stronger than ever. I had planned carefully, acted with precision, and it worked exactly as I had hoped. Colleagues who had doubted me before looked at me different. I could feel the balance shift. Ethan's arrogance and lies had been exposed, and I had done it without losing my composure. I didn't celebrate loudly. I simply closed the folder, gave a small nod, and returned to my seat. Sitting there, I realized that this was only the beginning. I had regained some power and respect, but there was more to do. The calm, calculated way I had handled the situation gave me a new sense of confidence. I knew I could face whatever came next and continue to reclaim what was mine, one step at a time, without letting anger or rash decisions cloud my judgment. I went to a big party where Nicole was the center of attention. She smiled, laughed, and told stories, thinking everyone admired her. I stayed calm, watched her, and waited for the right moment. I didn't need to confront her directly. Instead, I spoke casually to our mutual friends about things she had done behind the scenes, small details that only someone who really knew her would notice. I didn't accuse her, I just told facts. People started to react. Some remembered moments when she had lied or manipulated. Their expressions changed as they realized the truth. Nicole noticed this too. Her confident smile began to fade, and her laughter sounded forced. The doubts about her behavior were spreading quietly, and I could see it. While I did this, I also focused on myself. I knew that winning against Nicole wasn't enough. I needed to grow stronger and independent. I took courses I had delayed, learned new skills, and worked on things that made me more confident and capable. I reconnected with friends who truly cared about me, people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I also worked on my confidence. Not the kind that comes from proving someone else wrong, but the kind that comes from knowing my own worth. Each step I took made me stronger. Watching Nicole lose her charm was satisfying, but it felt even better to feel in control of my own life. Nicole's image slowly began to crumble. People started to question her, and her reputation suffered. Meanwhile, I was building a life that no one could damage. I felt proud of myself for standing up, but even more proud for focusing on what mattered: my skills, my friends, and my independence. I was learning to move forward without depending on anyone else's approval. I wasn't just exposing her lies. I was building a life where betrayal and manipulation couldn't touch me. I decided it was time to face my family. I had spent weeks gathering everything I could: emails, messages, financial records, little things that proved how much they had depended on me while treating me like I was nothing. I knew I didn't have to yell or cry to get their attention. I just had to show them the truth in a way they couldn't ignore. I called my parents and Liam into the living room, and they looked at me with a mix of confusion and arrogance, as if they thought I would apologize for leaving. I stayed calm. I started showing them evidence: small notes, messages, and proofs that revealed how they had humiliated me, laughed at me, and encouraged Ethan and Nicole's betrayal. I watched their expressions shift one by one. The smirks faded, replaced by guilt and shock. It wasn't just about the cake anymore. They had to face the reality of how cruel they had been, how they had sided against me, their own daughter, without any reason other than their selfishness. Liam tried to interrupt, tried to make excuses, but I didn't let him. I didn't raise my voice. I let the evidence speak for itself. Every question I asked, every example I showed, forced them to see themselves the way I had seen them for years. The small cracks in their defenses grew bigger as I calmly laid everything out. It was painful, yes, to see them finally understand how much they had hurt me, but it was also empowering. Meanwhile, Ethan and Nicole were already unraveling from the consequences of their actions. Ethan tried to act innocent at work, but everyone had seen the proof I shared earlier, and his reputation was slipping fast. Nicole, who had tried to maintain her charm, couldn't keep up. They began turning on each other, blaming one another for the mess they had created. I didn't need to get involved. I just watched them fight their own battles while I stayed in control, untouched by the chaos they had caused. The most satisfying part was seeing my family and them together, exposed in their own hypocrisy. I didn't have to push anyone or force confessions. Every insult they had thrown at me, every betrayal they had committed, started coming to the surface on its own. It was like watching a mirror reflect all their cruelty back at them. I realized I didn't need to punish anyone actively. Just letting the truth come out was enough. I stayed composed, not letting my anger take over. I focused on making sure they understood the weight of their actions, not just for my sake, but so they couldn't dismiss it or act like nothing happened. Every small glance of regret, every awkward silence, reminded me that their power over me had ended. I had reclaimed it. I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The family I had once trusted to love and protect me had shown their true colors. They had underestimated me, ignored me, and humiliated me, but I had turned the tables without losing my dignity. Watching them face themselves and each other made me stronger. I could finally move through this without fear, knowing that their betrayal no longer controlled my life. I had taken back my power, step by step, and nothing anyone said or did could change that. The air was tense as Ethan, Nicole, and my parents sat across from me in the living room. No one spoke at first, each waiting to see who would make the first move. Ethan tried to break the silence. "Sam, you're blowing this out of proportion." "I didn't do anything wrong," he said smoothly, his tone meant to make me doubt myself. I held his gaze steadily. "Ethan, everything you stole, every lie you spread, it's all documented. You can't hide from it anymore." His confident mask slipped, replaced by unease. Nicole spoke next, her voice sharp but shaky. "I didn't want it to get this bad. You're exaggerating everything." I raised a hand. "Nicole, you betrayed me. You made choices that hurt me, and blaming me won't fix anything." She faltered, realizing her usual guilt tactics had no effect. Then I turned to my parents. "Mom, Dad," you laughed. "You encouraged them. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You chose to side against me when you could have stood by me." Margaret opened her mouth, and Tom looked around, searching for words. "We didn't mean," Margaret began, but I stopped her. "Intentions don't undo actions. What matters is that I won't let it control me anymore." Liam shifted in his seat, quiet, avoiding my eyes. I didn't need to address him directly. He could see that I wasn't the same person who had let their words define me. As the conversation continued, I stayed calm, letting them speak but not letting their excuses change my resolve. I repeated clearly and firmly that none of them had control over me. Every betrayal, every lie, every attempt to manipulate me had failed. I was standing strong and unshaken. The room grew quiet. They realized no amount of argument or manipulation could change the truth. My calm confidence and the evidence I presented spoke louder than any words could. I had taken back my power without raising my voice or attacking anyone. By the end, the shift in the room was undeniable. Ethan and Nicole were tense, my parents subdued, and Liam silent. The weight of their own actions hung in the air, impossible to ignore. Nothing they said or did could undo the control I had reclaimed. For the first time in years, I felt steady and strong. Facing them head-on proved I had risen above their betrayal, and nothing could take that away. Sam started spending more time outside of the chaos her family and ex had created. That's when she met Jordan Hayes, a kind and understanding man who didn't try to control her or belittle her. Jordan was patient, and he listened without judgment, making her feel comfortable in a way she hadn't felt for years. At first, it was simple conversations over coffee, then long walks and quiet evenings where she could just be herself. Jordan didn't know about all the drama at first, and she didn't feel the need to explain everything immediately. He respected her pace, and that trust grew naturally. With Jordan, Sam realized she had changed. She wasn't the nervous, self-doubting person who had been laughed at by her own family. She had learned to set boundaries, stand up for herself, and trust her own instinct. She saw clearly now that her worth didn't depend on anyone's approval, not her family, not Ethan, and not Nicole. Every betrayal she had endured had taught her something about strength, resilience, and independence. Nicole, of course, couldn't leave things alone. She tried to reach out, sending messages that mixed apologies with subtle manipulation. She tried to pull Sam back into the old patterns, hoping to regain some influence over her. Sam read the messages once, and then she deleted them without replying. She didn't feel anger like before. She simply felt clarity. She had grown too much to fall for those tricks again. She wouldn't let Nicole shake the confidence she had worked so hard to build. Sam also noticed how much lighter her life felt. She didn't have to worry about people's opinions controlling her choices. She could focus on her own happiness, her own goals, and the people who genuinely cared for her. She started exploring things she had ignored before, taking a few classes she always wanted, reconnecting with friends she had lost touch with, and even finding small ways to enjoy life without stress. Every small choice felt empowering because it was hers alone. Jordan became a steady presence, supporting her in subtle ways. He didn't try to fix her problems, he didn't try to impress her, and he didn't rush their relationship. He just let her grow, and that gave Sam the confidence to enjoy trust again without fear. Together, they laughed over small things, shared quiet moments, and began building something real and uncomplicated. Even when memories of her past tried to creep back in, Sam no longer felt trapped by them. She remembered the cake, the laughter, the betrayal, and the lies, but instead of pain, she felt a sense of closure. She had faced every challenge, exposed every betrayal, and reclaimed her life. Nothing from the past could control her anymore. Sam felt proud of herself for how far she had come. She had learned who she could trust, who she could rely on, and most importantly, who she had become. She didn't need anyone to validate her anymore. She could smile at the world, walk forward confidently, and embrace every new opportunity on her own terms. Jordan was just a part of that new life, someone she could enjoy the journey with, but the real victory was hers, her independence, her strength, and her peace. The office was busy, but Sam felt calm and focused. Months of hard work, late nights, and quiet determination had finally paid off. Her promotion was official, and it was the kind of recognition she had always deserved. She looked around at her colleagues, some of whom had witnessed the drama with Ethan and Nicole, and she felt a quiet satisfaction. This time, her accomplishments were entirely her own. That evening, she invited a few close friends over to celebrate in a small, private gathering. Jordan was there, smiling and relaxed, a steady presence in her life. Her true friends, the ones who had stood by her through everything, brought food, laughter, and stories. The atmosphere was warm and light, a stark contrast to the tense, humiliating moments she had endured with her family. As they chatted, someone joked about cake, the kind that could ruin a day or a reputation. Sam laughed, a full, easy laugh that came from relief and triumph. "This time," she said, smiling brightly, "I'll order it myself." Everyone laughed along with her, and the comment hung in the air like a small but meaningful victory. She had turned the memory of humiliation into a private joke, a reminder of how far she had come. Sam looked around at the people who mattered most in her life now. No one was trying to manipulate her, belittle her, or use her for their own gain. She had built a circle of genuine friends who respected her boundaries and celebrated her successes. She realized she had grown stronger, not just professionally but emotionally. She had learned to trust herself and her judgment, and she had learned the importance of choosing the right people to share her life with. Jordan reached over and squeezed her hand gently. There was no pressure, no expectation, just support and understanding. Sam realized that trust could exist without manipulation or betrayal. She had been hurt before, but she had also learned to heal and to value herself enough not to let anyone repeat that hurt. Her past no longer held power over her. It was a lesson, a reminder of what she could overcome. The night was filled with laughter, stories, and shared moments that felt real and meaningful. Sam noticed how natural it felt to enjoy herself without worrying about judgment or betrayal. Every decision she made, Every step she had taken to rebuild her life had led her to this place of confidence and contentment. Even when she thought of her family and the people who had tried to bring her down, she didn't feel anger or resentment like before. Instead, she felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of triumph over every insult, every betrayal, and every attempt to control her. She had taken all that negativity and turned it into fuel for her own growth and success. As the evening went on, Sam realized something important. She was fully in control of her life now. She didn't need anyone's approval or validation. The promotion, the genuine friendships, and her relationship with Jordan were proof of her independence and strength. And as she looked around the small gathering, smiling and relaxed, she felt an overwhelming sense of victory. The humiliation, the betrayal, and the lies that had once held her back were no longer a part of her present. She had transformed those dark moments into her ultimate revenge, not through anger or retaliation, but by thriving, succeeding, and living her life on her own terms. What would you have done if your own family turned against you like Sam's did? Should she have forgiven them or stood her ground? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your opinion. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like this.